Welcome to our special edition Fruit for Thought today on Are You OK Day. My name is Tegan Davies, the head of programs here at Be Well Co. There's some new names here today, which is really exciting. So for those who don't know much about us, we're a organisation that loves to research the latest findings in mental health and wellbeing, and then translate that research and also others' research into really practical evidence-based programs to support organisations and employees to be at their best. So today we've got a wonderful speaker, Jaelae Skehan. She is a wealth of knowledge, and I'm really, really interested in having a super interactive session. So today, if you can, to write in the chat, to engage in the polls and ask questions. It's not just about me and Jaelae speaking. We'd really love lots of interaction. For those who also don't know, we also happen to be Camp Quality Social Enterprise. So when organisations choose us, they're not just supporting their own people, they're also helping Camp Quality do its amazing work for kids facing cancer. Jaelae, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
We absolutely are so thrilled to have you here. So Jaelae, for those who may not know her name, she's the director of Every Mind. She is a conjoint lecturer at the College of Health, Medicine and Wellbeing at uni. I was going to say Melbourne. I'm in Melbourne. Use your brain. She's in Newcastle, so it's the Uni of Newcastle. She's also the global chair of Movember, an organisation really close to our heart, and is an affiliate researcher at the Hunter Medical Research Institute and Manor Institute. So a very well-rounded person to be having this conversation today. So Jaelae, you've been involved with Are You OK Day for a while. Can you give us an understanding of why you joined the organisation and how it's evolved since you have been around, which is quite some time?
Yeah, so I started working in mental health and suicide prevention over 25 years ago now. I'm celebrating the Festival of 50 this year, so people can do the math and how long you might be working in a sector. And when Are You OK first came on the scene in the kind of suicide prevention sector, I was leading some national work around how we communicate about mental health concerns, about suicide, and about other related concerns in the mass media. And so Gavin Larkin, who was the person who founded Are You OK, came from a marketing background, so come from outside of the sector, which I actually love. I think sectors need to evolve and bring on new knowledge and new skills, and really wanted to kind of shake up the current approach and develop something that would appeal to the masses and not just appeal to the really informed. And so I've never worked for Movember, but my organisation, Every Mind, and sorry, Are You OK? I've got Movember in the office today. Are You OK and Every Mind have partnered on some work over that time. But I was also involved in their conversation think tank, which was a small group of people that kind of helped advise about the evidence base behind some of the programs of work and how we might define the message in a way that both related to the science of how you do this, but also supported people in communities that have different ways of communicating, different ways that they'd like to be communicated with, and what would that look like for a campaign, essentially. So I've been kind of either on the side or a bit more closer to the journey for Are You OK, and seen both the ways that it's implemented across different settings and its movement from a day to a kind of an everyday conversation, but also been around some of the backlash or some of the kind of ways in which people are curious about, what it addresses and perhaps what it doesn't address.
It's really interesting you tap on the backlash, because if I reflect on Are You OK Day and its evolution, it is probably one of the most recognised health campaigns in Australia. Like if we just take a step back and say, if we think about Slip, Slop, Slap, that's the first one I can think of. And now you've got Are You OK Day, right? So an incredibly successful campaign initially to prevent suicide. But of course, we know it does so much more than that. While we're on that topic, it's probably worth mentioning for those who are dialing in, just a handle of care message here. We will be talking about suicide and mental health. So we really want you to take your own health and wellbeing in your own hands today. And if you need to go and have a cuppa and come back, there'll be a recording so you won't miss anything. I think that's important to know. But you're right, there has been a bit of a backlash about Are You OK Day, which is a shame because the day was never meant to solve all of our problems when it comes to mental health and well-being. But what is the backlash that you hear, and what do you think we can do about it?
Yeah, and I think part of the issue, I think, is people taking one program, campaign, set of resources, tools, because Are You OK is all of those things, and trying to apply it in ways that it was never designed to do. And so there's a range of things, and this commonly happens with campaigns or with programs that have been running more than that kind of 5-10+ year life cycle. So it's almost natural. Our programs have gone through phases of backlash as well when they've been operating for a while. But I think one of the biggest concerns is the inauthentic application of the Are You OK message, and particularly the inauthentic application of it in workplaces. And so while I will also say that in community settings, obviously for some people, the Are You OK message and the kind of bystander peer conversation is not enough for them, right? They are beyond the point of an everyday Are You OK conversation, and the conversations they need are, is the care you're getting okay? Are the types of services and supports you're getting okay? Are You OK doesn't fundamentally change our mental health and suicide prevention service systems, but what it does create is an opportunity for the everyday person to get involved in understanding what they can do to have conversations that matter. And so where I see it particularly concerning is when we hear that workplaces, for example, given I know many of the people on the call today will be coming from a workplace perspective, they roll out the yellow cupcakes, they have their comms team send out an Are You OK message, or it comes from the CEO or the senior leader, but it's written by comms, right? And it hits the mailbox, and maybe people do this inauthentic texting of each other, Are you okay? Or saying it kind of in the hallways. But that's not authentic, right? If that is the only thing you do for mental health and well-being, or for things that matter in your workplace, then it's not enough. And so it's almost like the tick and flick scapegoating, or the use of it to tick a box, then authentically thinking about how does this sit with the range of things that you could or should be doing in your workplace. So I'm going to say this with 2 days to go for Are You OK? If you're putting on an event, but you've done nothing else in mental health, well-being, psychosocial safety for the whole year, have a think about what you're doing and why you're doing it. It could be a reason to start a conversation with people about what would be effective. But many people that I've spoken to with lived experience, so with their own personal experience of mental health concerns, suicidal distress in workplaces, find it abhorrent that the workplace will send out mass communication and put on yellow cupcakes, yet nobody has authentically asked them all year if they're okay. And it's quite clear that they're not, or it's quite clear that the workplace is not okay, that there's a level of incivility, that there is, too much work and so few resources. And so a whole range of things that we can go into. But what I'd say, it doesn't matter what you do it with authenticity and use it as a tool in a range of other things that you can utilize, and people will get on board. But if you use it in your plan saying that's mental health done for the year, people will see through that immediately. And actually, it's not just backlash that can cause harm.
Absolutely. Oh, goodness, Jaelae, there was so much goodness in all of that. I was like taking mental notes of like, yes, we want to talk about this and this and this. I think that's a really interesting point with 2 days to go. If you haven't actually thought about anything, using Are You OK Day as a consultation piece is so powerful to say, we know we might not have done so much so far, but to recognize this day, we want your feedback. And you were talking about psychosocial risks and hazards. We know that the legislation across Australia has and is changing, and consultation is a key pillar of that legislation. So we really, as organisations, need to be being able to demonstrate that. I'd love to go on to what organisations can do and what people can do themselves. But this, I think, might be a nice segue for us to launch a couple of polls. So Liv, my incredible sidekick, will be launching a couple of polls. It would be really useful for us to hear and see what's happening on the ground so that we can have this in the conversation today. So the first question here is, how confident do you feel about having a conversation about mental health with a colleague? So hopefully you can see the options there. We'll do, there's a few polls and we'll ask them all at once. So how confident are you? And for those who are watching us on the big screen, obviously it'll be a bit more challenging for you, because I know that a few folks are joining in from the big screen who have Jaelae and Maya's big noggins on the screens in front of you. We probably should have made a bit more effort with our makeup today. So we'll give you a few more moments for that question there, and then we'll move to the next. Beautiful. So the responses are, I suppose half of the group feel somewhat confident but would like some more tools. That's pretty good. I think that's a really great outcome, that really you feel relatively confident. And then after that, probably the next group is, just under 30% of people feel very confident and experienced. That is really fantastic to hear. It demonstrates how powerful a campaign like Are You OK Day has been in our workplaces, because I can tell you it's very different from even my dad's generation. We were talking about this last week. That's really interesting. Liv, if you wouldn't mind popping on the next question, that would be amazing. When I was talking to my dad, Jaelae and the crew about it, he was like, I asked my colleague if he was okay. This was years and years ago, and my dad's a very traditional miner, and he never got back to me. He never told me how he was. And I was like, that's okay, Dad. That's not the point. The point is you actually demonstrated care and you saw something. So we can probably talk a little bit about that. But number 2 poll, in your workplace, how often do conversations about mental health and well-being happen outside Are You OK Day, etc., and Mental Health Month, which is next month? Regularly, sometimes, rarely, never. Let us know how your organisation does. And the magical poll will come back. So that doesn't surprise me. So we've got 61% of people saying sometimes, and it really is dependent on the leaders. I think that's pretty common. What we see in our workshops is that some people feel way more skilled, and also the previous poll mentioned that than others. And then a quarter of you say pretty regularly, a part of your everyday culture, which is fantastic. And then last poll, just to help us frame the conversation today. And again, we would love to answer your questions if you have any. And what do you see is the biggest barrier to having supportive conversations at work? Confidence, fear of making it worse. I know that's one that comes up quite a lot in our workshops. Good old work pressure and workplace culture. And then Liv, once you're ready, it will be amazing to get the results. I'm eager. Oh, wow, this is very equal. Oh my goodness. So hopefully you can see these results at the moment. So 42% time pressure, workload, fear of making it worse. And wow, all of them are very close. Confidence. I think that's really useful. In fact, I'm going to just make sure I screen grab that and make sure I don't forget what we're going to talk about later on, because that's really useful. And really interestingly, I mean, time pressure, workload is one of the psychosocial risks and hazards. And so I think that in itself, if we keep talking about that, that is a really interesting connection. So Jaelae, just based on those polls, what's coming to mind for you? Is there anything that's popping up?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. I'm going to say, firstly, on the kind of Are You OK message, one of the things that the Are You OK message and the 4 steps, which are ALEC, ALEC, so it's easy to remember: ask, listen, encourage action, and check back in. And we can go back and unpack those a little bit. But essentially, the Are You Okay message and the simple 4 steps was really designed to help people get over the fear that they're going to make it worse. And so there's a number of sort of different focuses that Are You Okay has had, as the kind of yearly campaigns come through, but really trying to tackle this fundamental issue that people have, that I'm worried I'm going to make it worse if I ask even the Are You Okay question. Or I don't know what to say next. And so I think it's really important to unpack those, because they tend to be, just in general in the community, the things that get in the way of people asking the question. And then the other things around time pressures and the culture of the workplace, I think, are particular things about the workplace, right? So, and I think they're different issues. One is about the confidence of the individual to have the conversations. And the other thing is about, is work okay? So not are you okay, but is work okay? And what's going on at work that is either contributing to concerns or getting in the way of people being able to solve or have these types of conversations. So the first thing, if I take the first two, if that's okay, Tegan, there is a lot of evidence that even if you fumble through the conversation, you're very unlikely to make it worse. And even big and difficult conversations, which is conversations where you need to say the S word and actually ask someone, are they having thoughts about suicide, which is not straight in the kind of are you okay messaging. But people, even if you don't use exactly the right words, and even if you don't follow the steps in the way in which they're being designed, it is highly unlikely that you'll put thoughts into people's heads that they don't already have. And it's highly unlikely that you'll make it worse, unless, of course, you're coming at it from a blame, judgment, accusatory place. If you're coming from a good place, trust me when I say it is better to fumble through the conversation and show up with care and concern, and feel okay about getting your smartphone out and Googling the steps and the next step and saying to someone, I'm finding this hard and I'm not quite sure what's next. So I'm just going to Google it because I know I can find some advice about what to do next. That is actually okay. It's actually okay to show that you're a bit vulnerable and a bit human, and you're showing up for the person and you're trying to figure it out. Okay. So the thing I love about Are You Okay and the ALEC acronym is it's relatively easy to remember. And I'm always surprised, and I shouldn't be, at how many people don't know this and how many people feel much more empowered and much more confident when they've got a really simple framework to have conversations. And can I tell you, lots of other much more in-depth training. So training you can do on suicide prevention through, say, assist training or mental health first aid training or other kind of clinical suicide prevention training, basically use similar types of framework for things. Now, how we respond and what we do always changes depending on whether we're a colleague, a peer, a leader. We might come back to that, a parent, and it feels different. It feels like the weight of the response feels a bit different, but actually how you have the conversations and those sort of steps are really good foundational guiding principles for people. So I'm not surprised to hear that about half, it's fear of making it worse and the confidence to do it well. And I'm saying actually just get rid of that if you can. But on the other side, I think this is also part of the backlash thing in workplaces, because I see workplaces trying to use Are You Okay as a tool for workplace mental health. And it's kind of not. It's a tool that can be part of building confidence to have certain types of conversations, but it isn't your workplace mental health and wellbeing strategy. It isn't your strategy for identifying and managing psychosocial hazards in the workplace. And those things are more about whether work is okay. And so while I think that having Are You Okay conversations are important and embedding that, and it's great to see so many people saying that it is something that they've embedded, I bet there are also workplaces that are doing other things other than having conversations, right? So I'd say the Are You Okay message, which is about the individual, must go with the is work okay conversation and consultation with your people. hand in hand in order for this to have some cut through in a workplace context. So is work designed in a way that is helping people to stay healthy and well? Do people have good role clarity? Do people have the right resources and supports to do their work? Is change managed well and communicated well in our team? Are people rewarded for great work and acknowledged for the work they're doing? So all of those things we kind of look at around psychosocial hazards, they're important to sit alongside of the conversation, because if people aren't okay because work's not okay, then we've actually got an issue as leaders in terms of what else do we do about that. And so you can't have conversations with poor workplace culture, because where does it go?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I'd love to explore what an individual leader can do when, maybe they're a middle leader and there's only so much of the work that they can actually control because KPIs are set from above. So I'd love to explore that. But before we do, could we just unpack our like a little bit more for those who are wanting to, like, who know that there's a conversation they need to have? Like, what are some key things under the ALEC model that you think would give them that confidence, knowing that, that is something that people feel a little bit icky about?
Yeah, great. So I'm going to cover it just from the generic place, and then I might sort of say some things that leaders might need to think about a bit differently. So first with the ask thing. So make sure you're kind of ready for the conversation. Don't overstudy, right? But you can also do it in real time. Okay, as I said, fumble through it. So notice a change in somebody, whether it's a change of behaviour, the way in which they're turning up, they're not joining their kind of remote check-ins. If you're a leader, perhaps performance has changed, right? So notice something that's changed in a person. It could be your child is doing, you're not sure that's just being a teenager, that something's going on. Tell people what you've noticed. I've noticed a change. I've noticed something, and I'm wondering if you are okay. So that's the ask bit. That's the A, right, of the ALEC. And you can ask that in many different ways. Like, it doesn't have to be, are you okay? I'm wondering if everything's okay for you. I'm wondering if you're traveling okay. I'm wondering if there's anything going on that you'd like to talk to me about. So in whatever way is authentic for you to ask that. But the first step is really to ask the question. But I like to start with why I'm asking the question. And so that goes back to asking it authentically, right? So if you just walk down the corridor and go, are you okay? Are you okay? Hey, buddy, you okay? That's not authentic. Jaelae, I've noticed, being an extrovert as you are, you're always in people's offices distracting them on office days, and you haven't been for the last 2 office days. Yeah. Is anything going on for you? Are you okay? That would be an authentic way of noticing a change in my behaviour, right? So notice something, ask the question. The next step is listening. And the important thing with listening is actually it's very hard for us to do. My work as a psychologist, and I'm a talker, right? So listening is a fundamental skill, but it's a fundamental skill for all of us. And being able to sit and let someone explain in their own words without jumping in or without trying to fix it or make it seem like it's less of a worry. So we're natural fixers, right? And so we want to sit and create silence for people, or even saying to people, I'm happy to sit here while you find the words. And sometimes I know it's hard to find the words. Be prepared to sit in silence for a while. Don't ask things like, it's not this, is it? Or you're not really worried, like it's not really bad, is it? So asking open questions so that people can respond in their own way. And then I like to do things like just reflect back, saying, I'm hearing things have been really difficult. So don't try and synthesize it really specifically. So listening, it's a hard thing to do. Thirdly, and listening can be done by chat, right? Listening doesn't have to just happen. We can modify for different technologies. I'm still here. I'll be here when you've found the words, whatever it might be. The third step, the E, I should know the ALEC model, is encourage action or encourage the next step. So, and the words are encourage, right? So they're not fix, they're not solve, they're not counsel, it's encourage. And so, and in the encourage stage, again, it depends on your relationship with the person, but can I tell you inauthentic way to encourage action, which is to slide the number of the EAP across the table and go, these people can help, or put it in an email.
Yep.
But again, asking open questions like, who else have you told, or who else would you feel comfortable talking to next? Or would you feel comfortable if I tried to look up some supports or services that could be helpful? Or what can I do to support you to take the next step? So, if you wanted to call EAP, like, why don't I make space for you to do that? And I can even dial the number for you and leave you to do it, or I can sit with you as you do that, because people think taking the next step is really easy and taking the next step is really hard, right? Seeking help is harder than offering help, okay? If you think it's hard to have the confidence to offer help, then trying to find words for sometimes things that don't have a language for you yet is actually difficult. So what can you do to encourage someone to take that next step? So who else can they tell? Who else do they feel confident knowing? What else could they do? Don't worry, I'm just going to look some things up for you, right? Feel free to fumble through. And the C is check back in. And this is really important in a workplace, but it's also important in a friend's scenario as well. And so that means don't just have the conversation once, but check back in to see how the person's going. And that, again, doesn't mean you're responsible, but it does mean that you are a regular person of checking back in. Because even if the person says, I'm fine, or I don't want to have the conversation, I'll say to them, do you mind if I check back with you in the next day or two just to see if you still feel the same way? Or if someone said they were going to make contact, or they're going to talk to their partner, or they're going to talk to their line manager, or whatever that might be, say, do you mind if I check back in with you tomorrow to see if you've done that? And here's the thing, right? Use tools, put it in your diary, set a reminder for yourself. We can use all the tools that are available for us to be able to do that and check back in. So ask, listen, encourage action, and check back in. They're the 4 steps. The only thing I'd say is if you're a line manager, that kind of works for a peer-to-peer, family member to family member, a friend to friend, colleague to colleague. If you're a line manager, because we bring ourselves to work, right? So a lot of what's not okay for us in a workplace might be coming from home. We're carers, we've got things going on with our kids, we've got things going on with our partners, our health is not good, but sometimes it's about work, right? And sometimes the are you okay conversation it's something that's come up in the workplace. Then I just want to say to people, then your responsibilities are then to try and ask some different questions to try and understand what's going on from a work perspective or for a workplace interaction perspective, and then using your kind of internal frameworks to kind of think about how you follow that through. And so I think sometimes people miss that the conversation for a leader might be a bit different because it comes with different responsibilities, right? Particularly if the what's not okay is work. But the 4 steps can be really helpful even in those conversations. Okay, so because the next steps or the kind of encouraging action might be for the person to follow up with someone they've had a interaction with at work. So our workplace harmony framework would say generally people who've had a conflict at work or an interaction would be that they have the confidence to go and have that conversation directly with the person. So it's encouraging the person to kind of take the next step on something that tools that you might have available in the workplace to manage these interactions. That makes sense.
Yeah, so great. And, before the session, you were talking, Jaelae, about how you love practical tools. And I can tell you, just hearing you work through the ALEC model, it was practical, 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 practical. And I'm sure everyone is listening going, yep, I could do that. That feels harder. Yep. Okay. Nodding away. We had a comment from one of the listeners about how to be able to listen better. And interestingly, they asked the question just as you talked through. So I feel like you might have actually answered that. And if not, to the person, feel free to ask again if you feel like you want some more clarity. We also had a couple of people mention that the changing work environment, how challenging it is to have meaningful connection in a virtual world. And then we have another question, but if you have some space, are there any tips around how to create that space when we're in a very virtual world?
Yeah, and in actual fact, you can come to an office and be very isolated in an office. And so I
Yeah.
think isolation occurs because of structure of work, because of location of work, because of type of work. So if you're driving a truck for a living, for example, then or you're managing people who are doing that kind of out and about work where they might be working on their own, it just takes different techniques. And so because sometimes too, the things that workplaces put in to create connections for people who are working remotely can also feel inauthentic. And so I always say to people, if you're not sure what to do, ask your people what they think will work, or let them experiment with some things that make sense. So, but it's interesting because I will often pick up, or people will pick up from me, even on Teams or Slack or whatever platform you use for communication, if you've got remote workers or you spend some of your time remote, people will actually pick up that something's different for people, even in those channels. So people have usually got patterns of behaviours in those. And so there's still an opportunity to ask the question in text format. People used to say you've got to be on the phone or you've got to be face to face. Actually, what we've learned from, you can get crisis chat now through Lifeline and the suicide callback service and other services, actually having really crisis driven conversations with people via messenger and chat. And so we do know that often people will open up. Some people like to communicate that way. And so trying to ask them to use a method that they don't naturally go to can also be a challenge. But I would say be purposeful about connection. And also connection for connection's sake is also good, right? So we're a workplace that does a lot. We lead with the "Are you okay?" and the kind of checking in as leaders, but also as peers a lot. So our "Are you okay?" day on Thursday, because it's an office day, is actually just a connection for connection's sake day, right? Nothing else. We're all in the office on a Thursday, so let's have team lunch for a whole hour, no work, no screens. Let's do that. That works for our organisation because we don't need to do some of the other stuff. It's just an opportunity for that. But be purposeful about connection time. Think about things that are authentic. Think about learning how your people, your colleagues or your staff or your leaders, how they communicate in remote formats, and pay attention to changes in those just as much as you'd pay attention to how someone might turn up to the workplace differently. But also as a leader, I've had people who've been entirely remotely in the past. I use leader rounding, which is just time with everybody to check in to see how they're going, but also what's working well, what's not working well, any things I should know about as the senior leader. But people can use those techniques all the time. So one-on-one meetings, but also those kind of peer-to-peer check-ins. And so roster them and routine them if it's actually getting in the way of your people being connected to each other and checking in on each other. So that's what I'd say to that question. Be purposeful about it and learn how people present in the everyday so that you know what they present like when things are not okay.
That is so, so useful. I think you nailed it in 2 minutes. Again, really, really practical. And when you were talking, I was reminded of something Camp Quality does. It's called fun therapy. So basically, almost at the start of every meeting, there is fun therapy, something fun, something to connect just for the sake of connection. It equalizes people, even if you're a board member and then a coordinator, it doesn't matter. You get to experience this literally for the creation of positive emotions that can help build and broaden our experiences and help us connect, because we know connection is so important for our well-being.
And we do the same thing. Our leadership group catches up first thing on a Monday, and since Mondays for me are for surviving and Tuesdays onwards are for thriving, right? Mondays are hard to kind of change pace and there are lots of meetings, but everyone shares something positive that happened in the last week. And so it could be work related or it could just be personal related, and you get to know each other as human beings, and that can happen remotely, right? And so just and actually if someone says I can't share anything positive, that's a really good indicator of saying you don't have to, or someone's having a difficult time and we know, and they go, can I skip today? I'm going, we're skipping. And then the check will be, does someone know what that's about? And as long as someone knows what that's about, and it doesn't have to be for everybody, that's also an opportunity. So the more you kind of build these short things in, the more opportunity is to kind of pick those things up that shift and change. But if we just let people be remote and let people not have those moments of connection, then it's much harder for us to be there for each other.
Absolutely. We've had a comment or a question come through. Someone has shared that they have been suicidal for the past couple of months and feels like if they tell their employer, they might lose their job. I think this is probably a pretty common experience for many people. And for the person writing in, I'm sorry that that's your situation. That's how you feel. Have you got any tips, tricks that might support that person?
Yeah, look, here's the thing I'd say, and thank you for sharing that, whoever has. And this is not uncommon, right? So we need to be really mindful that thoughts about suicide and people live with suicidal thoughts, and people are in our workplaces everywhere who are living with suicidal thoughts and suicidal distress. And sometimes we know about it and sometimes we don't. And so I'm going to try and respond to that question in two ways. One, I'd say the person, I never encourage people to disclose to their workplace without knowing what their workplace is like. I know that there are so many variable workplaces and leaders out there, and we're not yet there around the kind of stigma associated or the assumptions people make when people are living through suicidal distress. And so I don't know your workplace, so I'm not going to give you advice about whether to tell them. But certainly the reason it's important for workplaces to encourage a culture where people can speak up is, as a leader of people, I'm actually least worried about, I shouldn't say least, I'm not worried as much about people in my workplace that I know live with suicidal thoughts, because I can have ongoing conversations with them around what support looks like, or when ebbs and flows of work might get in the way of that. And so it's an open conversation. Clearly, we're a mental health and suicide prevention organisation, so those sorts of conversations are easier for us. But I'm more worried if I suspect that someone might be struggling, but they don't feel that they want to disclose that, because I feel that I'm less able then to have open conversations about what support looks like. And so if you think that the culture that we create about people not being okay at work doesn't matter, it does matter, because here we have somebody who's just said, for 2 months I've been feeling like this, and I'm really not sure whether the people in my workplace would be okay to hear this. But what I'd also say to them, whether you think your workplace is the place for supports, make sure that there are some supports available to you. And often I say to people, who do you trust? And it might be your manager or a colleague, or it might be someone to the side, but thinking about where your trust circle is with sharing this, or what other types of supports might look like for you. But the thing I'd say for people leaders out there, if I could, one of the huge myths I think that we have, and I think one of the challenges I have with where some of the legislation and reporting requirements are going, is that I hope that we don't inadvertently further stigmatise people who live with suicidal distress, because workplaces are worried that if they have a suicide, they need to get rid of people who maybe have suicidal distress. There'll be people experiencing suicidal distress in your workplace, whether you know about it or not. If you're a male-dominated industry, okay, you're much more likely for not just alcohol and other drug issues to show up in your workplace, but for suicide to show up in your workplace. This is a human experience that can occur, and it's really important that we think about, how do we support people? Is work contributing? Often it isn't. Work can be great for people, as being, something meaningful to do, but don't make the assumption that because someone's experiencing suicidality, they need to be off work, out of work, or adjusted work. They might need to adjust the work, or the things they work on might need to be adjusted. But please don't make the assumption that because someone's got a mental health concern, or because somebody is living with suicidal distress, that they can't do their actual job, because actually people are doing it all day, every day. And so the question is, are there additional supports that people need, or are there additional supports they need from time to time? And what is the role of work in that support network for people?
Yeah, and it just what I've heard, throughout our conversation is it's driven by the person. Over and over again, I kept hearing you say, "Don't make assumptions." We think something, but actually it might be the opposite. So thank you for that answer to the person who asked that question. I hope that gave you some clarity. But as always, please make sure you reach out to whatever support services are relevant for you, Beyond Blue, Lifeline, maybe your workplace EAP, maybe your GP, whatever it is, or a friend, colleague. Please make sure that you're reaching out. We have 5 minutes left. There was another question that I'd love to answer, Jaelae. So one of the people were asking how they can support one of their colleagues whose manager doesn't look like they're very well equipped to support them. And potentially their manager may be playing a role in this. So what can that amazing, beautiful, caring person do to support their colleague?
Yes, there's a couple of things I'd say. One is, I always say to people, forget the workplace for a minute. Human being to human being, we can make a fundamental difference in people's lives. I've worked in this area long enough. I work with people with lived experience a lot. I have my own lived experience, but as someone bereaved by suicide, so I've lost members of my family to suicide and supported people through suicidal distress. So, but actually somebody showing up for somebody else can make a fundamental difference. So please feel confident that you won't make it worse. If you feel capable, have that conversation and ask them what support looks like for them in the workplace. Not knowing the size of your workplace and the systems in place, things at work can contribute, and the relationship between people and ineffective leadership can actually exacerbate things that are going on. Sometimes I usually use the word exacerbate because, usually the drivers of distress are quite complex and kind of interrelated. But talking to them so they've got agency about what they do next, but also finding out from your workplace what are the ways in which to report concerns in a way that would mean people can look at this without actually taking away the kind of agency or the confidentiality of the person, if that makes sense. So sometimes it's not on us to make people better leaders, but leaders of leaders should be investing in leadership support. And I think our investment in leaders is actually a fundamental thing we can do, because leaders need to take care of the kind of psychosocial hazards and making sure that work's okay, but also they are fundamental to ensuring that their people are okay as well, whether that's a life thing or a work thing that's contributing.
Yeah,
hopefully that helps.
Yeah, I know it gave me some clarity, so hopefully it did to the person who asked the question. So we know mental health and wellbeing is a big kahuna, but it doesn't also have to be. So to close out today, what do you like to do to support yourself when you're feeling like you've had a bit of a rough time? In fact, Jaelae has had a bit of a rough time. The past few days have been a bit intense for her. What are some things you like to do, either reactively or proactively, to look after your health?
Look, a number of things. Look, I'm a leader of people, and so I'm very aware that how I show up in the workplace impacts on other people. And can I say I was a leader of people when I was young. So I learnt the hard way that actually the way I show up to work is fundamental to the well-being of my people, or the people that I work with every day. So there's some boundaries I put in place with work. So sleep is kind of like a kind of a superpower that we all need, but one I find hard. So I've got to structure my work to give me the best conditions for sleep. So I do not work at nights. When I log off from work, I usually am logged on for work anytime between kind of 6:30 and 7:30 in the morning, and I'm logged off by about 4:30 in the afternoon on a usual day, maybe a little bit later. But I do not work in the evenings, right? Because then sleep's interrupted, and if sleep's interrupted, it's a whole spiral thing. For me, I was sick on Friday, so I knew yesterday was going to be a back-to-back Monday. I don't find Mondays easy. So I went for a walk before I went to work rather than coming to work a half an hour earlier. And so things you do for your well-being can be really simple, but I also do things outside of work. I run a netball club. I surround myself with people who don't care what I do for work in my outside of work time, and that's really great for me. And so For some people, it might be purpose outside of work. For me, it's getting away from the work. They call me Coach Jelly, right? They don't even know
Coach Jelly
before or after my name. They have no idea what I do for a job. I'm Coach Jelly. Thanks, everyone.